everyone. I'm Abigail. This is Eli, and welcome to another Two Kids interview. Today we're joined by New York Times bestselling author James Ponti. Mr. Ponti has written the Dead City trilogy, Trapped, Vanished, Framed, the novelizations of numerous Disney movies, including The Prince of Persia, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, Tron, two Pirates of the Caribbean stories, and of course, Mr. Ponti has also wrote the City Spies series, which has its fifth book coming out on February 6th of Mission Manhattan. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. I normally don't tell people about the novelizations. That's amazing that you know that. But yeah, that was way back when I was first getting started. So how are you all today?
Good.
Okay.
You wrote a zombie trilogy series. What do you think makes zombies so interesting to people?
Well, I never really had known much about zombies or seen any zombie movies or read any zombie books. But what interested me about it was the thought that they could be undead, but also that they could look like everyone else, that you couldn't tell if they were real or not real or fake or, all these things. And that really became, for me, a big part of the story. And the zombies that I wrote about weren't like the ones that sometimes you'll see with like pieces falling off and they do this weird walk. There's some of that, but very little. Mostly they were people who looked just like every other day normal people. And what was fun in the story was my characters had to figure out which ones were undead and which ones were just regular people.
Since you didn't watch anything zombie, did you have to do any zombie research before writing the book?
I did. I do tons of research for all my books. I do research about the geography and the characters and things like that. Now, one of the reasons I picked zombies was a lot of other monsters, supernatural creatures, whatever you want to say, like vampires or werewolves. They have a really well established like set of rules that go with them. Vampires only come out at night. They turn into bats. They have to bite. All these things. And what I liked about zombies, what appealed to me was it seemed a little open-ended, and it seemed like I could create my own version of zombies. So yes, I did research, but I didn't do too much because I wanted to come up with my own original kind of monsters.
You are very well known for your awesome spy stories. What are the elements that make a good spy story?
Well, I think one of the things that appeal to, first of all, when I was a kid, I loved spy stories. So I love James Bond movies and stories about, I was just really fascinated by spies. And I think it's something that's really natural for kids in, say, middle school, elementary school to be interested in. Because really, in a lot of ways, when we're that age, we're like spies. We are, at least me, when I got to school, I would kind of like look around and I try to see what everyone else was doing, and I would try to study other people. Every now and then you try on kind of new identities and you try to fit in, try to go unnoticed, kind of like a spy does. So I think that's part of it. I think the ability to do something secretly surrounded by people that don't know you're doing it is really fun and fascinating. I think that spy stories should have adventure, they should have action, they should have really interesting locations. Hopefully, one of the things people like about the City Spies books are that each one takes place in a couple of really interesting cities, and you learn all about those cities. And I try to study as much as I can about the cities when I write about them. So I think exotic locations, good mysteries, adventure, all that kind of comes together, and we want all of that in our spy stories.
Out of curiosity, what is your favorite spy movie?
Oh, wow, that's a great one. I am way older than you, obviously, and even it's older than me. But an old movie that I love is called North by Northwest, and I would consider that a spy movie, even though he's an accidental spy in it. I love James Bond stories, so there's a lot of James Bond ones. So, I would say Skyfall was probably my favorite James Bond, but any James Bond story is really kind of fun.
I saw Dr. No in the movie theater.
Where did you see? How did that come to be? That's such an old movie.
60th anniversary.
Oh, did you like seeing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I like that movie.
You wrote for the show The Mickey Mouse Club. What is your favorite memory from working on that show?
Oh, wow. I had so many. So the Mickey Mouse Club was a show that was 30 years ago almost. And it was, we had kids called Mouseketeers. They were between 12 and 18 years old, and they would sing and they would dance and they would perform funny sketches. And my job was, I was one of the writers of the funny sketches. And what we didn't know at the time was a lot of those kids would grow up to be really famous. So Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears are both big singers now who were Mouseketeers. I knew when they were 11. Justin Timberlake was one. Ryan Gosling, who's just in Barbie, he was one of the ones that I would write for when he was a 12-year-old. I think my favorite moment was, it wasn't a specific moment. It was just, we would work really hard writing. All the team would work. There was like 8 writers, and we would stay up late till like 2 a.m. sometimes trying to make something funny that wasn't funny yet. I would sometimes go in and I'd sit underneath the audience where no one could see me. And I would just sit there, and I just loved to hear the people laugh. And that's how you knew that the jokes were working. Because if you would hear the audience above me laughing, then I know we had done a good job.
You were not a big reader growing up. How did you become such a good storyteller?
I always loved writing. I always loved storytelling. I was just a really slow reader, and it frustrated me. I would never finish the books in class that other people finished, and I didn't have good patience at home to catch up. And so I just always felt like reading was a hard thing for me. But I grew up in Florida, but we didn't have air conditioning in my house, so I was 13 years old. And so I would, in the summer when it got really hot, I would go to the movies. And my mom would let me go to the movies by myself. And sometimes I would go and I would watch the movie twice. And the first time I just watched it and enjoyed the movie. I really loved movies. But then I'd sit through because it was cool and I was having a good time and I liked the movie, and I'd watch it the second time. But since I knew how the plot was going to turn out, I would start to notice how they made the movie, how they told the story. And I really got fascinated by that. And that's why when I went to college, actually, I majored in filmmaking. And so that's why I started in television. I didn't think I could write books because I was such a slow reader. It came to be by writing scripts. I got better at it. And then eventually, and I love to read now. I'm still not a fast reader. My friend Stu Gibbs reads books 10 times faster than me. It's so frustrating. And he writes books faster than me too. And they're really good books. But I think it was partly the fact that I wasn't a good reader just got me so interested in the elements of the story and figuring out that I savored them that much more. I savored them in movies or in telling stories at home to my mom, or when I would read, just really get into those stories.
In your City Spies books, of all the cities in the world, why did you decide for your characters' code names to be the cities Brooklyn, Sydney, Rio, Paris, Kathmandu, and Cairo?
That was where the book began. So I knew I wanted to write about a group of kid spies, and I was pretty sure I wanted there to be 5 spies. And I had a real worry about that. And my worry was that with 5 different characters, so probably it would be 3 boys or 3 girls and 2 boys, so it'd be a mix of characters, that it would be hard for the audience to remember who was who. So, is Richard the one who's good at computers, or is Richard the one who's good at sports or whatever, right? And so I thought, what if, and then remembering their whole backstories, because I wanted them to be from all over the world, I thought, what if I made their names the places they were from? If their code names were the cities that they were from, then when you read the book, you would automatically remember who that person was. Paris. Oh, Paris is the one from France, because you know that Paris is in France. Oh, Brooklyn is the one from America, because you know that. And so then I thought, okay, I like that. But, you want to make sure that the names sound realistic still. So, for instance, you guys, if like it was Grand Rapids, Michigan, right? You don't want a character going, "Hey, my name is Grand Rapids." That doesn't make sense. So you wanted names that sounded like people's names also. So I spent an entire day going through lists and atlases and books and maps, picking out names. I picked out like 100 names of places that sounded like people's names. And I decided I wanted each kid to be from a different continent. So that narrowed the list down, and I just picked one per continent. So like for the United States, it was going to be, and I thought for sure the North American kid would be American from the United States. So I had Brooklyn, Charlotte, Savannah, Orlando, Dallas, Austin. I had all these names, and I thought, I really like Brooklyn. So then I narrowed down the names, and I picked the 5 names. And then because I knew where they were from, I tried to ask myself, well, what would someone from Australia be like that's different than maybe someone who grew up in the mountains of Kathmandu, and Kathmandu. And so then that helped me get to know the characters. So normally I do the characters first and then name them, but this time it was all backwards.
What is your process when putting a book together? Do you decide the end before the middle, or do you put it together in order?
Wow, that's a great question. I especially like the way you tag team to answer that. So some people outline a lot. I don't outline much. I think of big story things, and I usually try to figure out what the main problem is and what the very end is. So what's the problem and how do we solve it? and the rest I do in order from the beginning. And I write it, and I'll usually write the first chapter, and then I'll rewrite it and write the second chapter. Then I'll go back and I'll rewrite the first two and write the third chapter. So I rewrite the early chapters a whole bunch, because as I as I come up with things later on, I realize I have to fix some things earlier. And I do that always aiming at the ending that I think I want, but accepting that ending might not, I might change my mind as I get closer to it.
Can you tell us about a time you were doing something and you noticed someone or something and thought, I need to put that in a book?
Wow, that is a fantastic question. It happens every day. It's now I'm trying to think. A friend once told me that when she was in middle school, she was part of this club of girls, and they each had little pins that they got at like a jewelry store, really they're like $5 pins. They were really special to them, and they all matched. And then at one point, they took her pin from her and they told her they didn't want her to be their friend anymore. And this was 25 years later. She was still heartbroken. And I asked her, I said, wow, can I use that in a book? Because if you're okay with that, I go, I would never imagine that. That's a real thing that I'm sure readers can associate with. So that's a hard one. Sometimes it will be, I read all about spies and real spy cases and real things that happen. And like, oh, this person was smuggled out in the trunk of a car. Like, oh, I need to do that. So like for City Spies 3, which was for Forbidden City, I actually ended up talking to the former director of the CIA. His wife is a librarian, and I asked him, tell me real spy stories and I'll put them in the book. So it happens all the time. But just the other day, I asked a friend what the tallest building in his hometown was. And he told me, and then he said, oh, because his hometown was in the book. And I need to know what the tallest building is. And he told me what it was. And he said, when I was in 8th grade, we had a contest where we dropped eggs off the roof to see if he could build a thing to protect the egg. I thought, oh, that's such a great way for me to talk about it being the tallest building. And so I totally stole the egg thing. Like within 3 minutes, it was in the book. So you have to be careful when you talk to me, because I will put your life in my book, but I usually ask permission, because you may not want your life shared with everyone.
Writing isn't easy, and rejection seems to be a part of most writers' story. Can you tell us about that part of your journey?
I've been lucky. Most of my rejection came in my TV side of life, because I started writing for television and then with books. And by the time I got to books, I was older and had more experience, and I was able to kind of pick better targets. But one of the things you really have to do is you have to realize that the thing that's being rejected is what you put on the paper, not you. They're not saying you're a bad person, you're not good enough, you're not. They're saying this is not a story that we want to publish. Now you can decide. The problem is writing is so personal when we do it that it feels like they're saying they don't like us. Keeping that separation in your head is important. Second thing is realizing that just because they think that doesn't mean it's true. Hopefully, Eli there has read some of my books and he likes the books. So hopefully Eli is a fan who will like the next City Spies book, almost for sure, because I know it's in keeping with the other City Spies books. But you might have another friend who is a great reader, who is a really good friend and really kind, who may just not like spy stories, and they're not going to like it. I shouldn't feel bad about that, because no book is for everyone. So what you need to do is I'm going to focus on the fact that Eli really likes the book. And I'm not going to focus on that maybe Janet doesn't like the book. And I'm not going to dislike Janet or be angry at her or try to prove her wrong. Although I will listen to her. If she says, oh, I just found it unbelievable, I think, okay, that's fair. Maybe that will help me in the future when I'm writing something else. So rejection, not taking it personally, is super hard to do, but it is the only way to get through it for me. And sometimes you have to remind yourself that a lot of really well-known authors and a lot of really beloved books were rejected by a lot of people. I was talking to another friend who's pretty well known, Kate DiCamillo, and Kate was talking about how when she wrote Because of Winn-Dixie, like even members of her own family, who you think is going to be your biggest supporters, are like, eh. And it won all these awards. It's this amazing book. So you can't let one person's opinion get you down too much.
We have interviewed a number of authors who have had books banned, which means that many kids won't have access to the same books we do and possibly not see themselves represented in books. Can you give us your thoughts on this?
It is heartbreaking. It is, it's heartbreaking on so many levels. a lot of my friends are, a lot of the people you've interviewed are friends of mine. And a lot of my friends are having their books attacked. And not only that, they are being attacked. And even if they weren't my friends, people who I would admire and respect anyway, it is a mistaken approach to me, in my opinion. We have to separate opinion from fact here, because it is not only important that young readers, all readers, but especially young readers, see themselves, identify with characters in the book. It's important that characters see other people unlike themselves and identify with them, right? So if you are a member of a Native American tribe, it's really great if you can read a book like Brave, my friend James Bird wrote about his life being that. So that's great for that kid, but it's also great for a kid who's never been close to a reservation before, who's never met someone who's Native American before, because it expands their view. The thing that reading does for us is it expands our view of the world, and it helps generate empathy. It helps us identify with and relate to and feel the appropriate emotions to people who are unlike ourselves. Book banning is just horrible. It is just, and it is devastating, and the cost is not always obvious at the beginning. It's not obvious till later on, until a generation of young readers has missed out on things. When they're adults, it becomes more apparent. So I think it is essential that we do what we can to keep book banning from happening, to keep books available for people. But I think it's also important for us to listen to all people's concerns. You can say, well, I find this book troubling, and I feel like if we talk about it, maybe that person would find it less troubling, as opposed to we just say, well, you're wrong, even though I think they're wrong. I think that, it's like, well, let me hear what you have to think. So I think it is a complex issue, but I also think it's a pretty straightforward and simple issue, as far as we realize we have worked so hard in our industry to give voice to more people with more perspectives. We were way behind in that in writing, and I say we. It was before I was even part of it. But it's like the books that I grew up on. Part of the reason maybe I wasn't a great reader was there was a sameness to them, and we aren't that anymore. And it's frustrating because some people want us to go back to that.
On a lighter topic, we saw a picture of you when you were really young holding a lion cub. Even though the Lion King wasn't a thing yet, do you regret not doing the Simba pose?
I do. How great would it have been if I had done the Simba pose? I just stumbled across that picture yesterday. Here, hold on one second. So you're talking about this picture, right? So that's me. I'm the same size as the lion almost. I couldn't have held it up Simba wise, but I look at this and I feel two things. So this is back. I was born in Italy. This is a small circus, a traveling circus in Italy. They shouldn't. This was the 1960s. They shouldn't do this with lions. So yeah. I think that was wrong. The fact, though, that it happened, I still have a fondness of this picture, because the tradition was supposed to be that it makes you brave to hold a lion, and I am not brave at all. So it did not work at all. But that's part of my childhood in Europe for sure. That's and childhood. I was in the United States by the time I was 2, but my early childhood in Europe.
What advice do you have for young people who want to write?
I have a lot. So there is the kind of philosophical advice, and then there's practical advice. I'll give you a little bit of both. The greatest thing about writing, this is why book banning is so bad, is that only you can tell your stories. That means they're unique to you, and you tell them better than anyone. So the important thing if you want to be a writer, is to not try to figure out how can I impersonate this writer, or how can I be more like them. You can think about, what I like about this or what I like about that, but it's like, no, be you. Tell us your story, the thing that you value, the thing that's important to you, and tell it to us in your voice. So that's essential. So trust yourself that you have a story. And I was a very unconfident kid, but have the confidence that your story matters, that I personally want to hear it, that other people want to hear it. Now, the actual nuts and bolts of writing, if you want to be a writer, you got to write all the time. You got to try it all the time. You got to work on it. I write every day. I write on the weekends. It's just part of my daily life. You have to finish things. A lot of people say, I've started 7 novels. It's like, well, finish one. And if a novel is too long to finish, and usually to start off, a novel is too long to finish, write a short story, write a poem. but writers finish the things they start. So get in the habit of finishing things and making them progressively longer. So write in your voice, complete things, and then the final little trick of the trade that I would give you, and every writer I know does this, I think, read everything you write out loud so you can hear it. Don't just read it. When you read it, your eyes jump things, you miss things. When you're checking it, when you want to make it feel realistic, read it out loud. And when you hear it, then it comes to life.
We already know about and are excited for the new City Spies book, Mission Manhattan, coming in February. Can you tell us about another project that you are working on?
Yeah, sure. So Mission Manhattan comes out in February. That's the next City Spies book. And this book is the first book where Rio is the main character. So that was fun for me to write. The next book that I'm coming out, so starting next year, I have 2 books a year. So I'll keep having City Spies books come out for a while. There'll be at least 8 of them, maybe even more. So every February, a new City Spies book will come out. But in the fall, so either in the end of August, so summer, fall, beginning of September, there will be a new series called The Sherlock Society. And that I'm very excited about. It's about 4 kids. 2 of them, brother and sister. Their grandfather was a reporter for the Miami Herald. He's retired. He lives with the family. And along with their friends, they form this group called the Sherlock Society. And they investigate old mysteries that he covered as a reporter decades earlier. And they try to find the answers now. Super fun. I just finished the first one. I can't wait for people to read it.
That also sounds kind of like Sherlock Holmes, and we are excited for that too.
All right, that's great. Well, that's why it's called the Sherlock Society. Yeah, I like Sherlock Holmes a lot.
Finally, it's time for Turbo 10. 10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
You know what? I know you asked these, and so I didn't watch the other people's because I didn't want to learn it, but now I feel like I should have prepared more for this. So I am as ready as I can be. I just hope I do nearly as well as Stuart did. I'm sure Stuart did well at this. Okay. But I won't do as well as Jasmine Warga because Jasmine's way smarter than me. Okay.
Number 1, what is your favorite phrase to use?
I don't know where this came from, but all the time when I'm writing, I will hear myself say out loud, okay, James, what are you thinking? And it's just like, it's my way of reminding myself that you have all these ideas and you have to put it on paper. So I'll just be, walking through the house on my way somewhere. Like, okay, James, what are you thinking? And I'll go, oh, wait, what am I thinking? So it's not a great phrase, but I use it all the time.
Number 2, what is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Wow, what would I love to learn more about? I really enjoy architecture. I would not be good at it. I'm not good at drawing. I'm not good at math. I'm okay at some math, but not the sciencey engineering part of math and architecture is. But I am fascinated by buildings, and when I travel places, I really love to see the buildings. So I would love to know more about architecture.
Number 3, what's your go-to snack food?
Oh, I will just say chocolate covered peanuts.
Number 4, what was your favorite book growing up?
Well, I didn't read a lot, so it makes it easy to pick out. But I had one absolute favorite that I love called From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsberg. Awesome, amazing book. It's the 11th greatest book ever written.
Number 5.
By me. Yeah. Okay, go on.
No, number 5, if you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
If I could teleport, I would go to Rome, Italy. I have relatives there that I want to hang out with that I haven't got to meet yet. So I would go to Rome. But Illinois to visit you guys to be right up there. Yes. Okay. Number 6.
Number 6, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
My superpower would be able to read faster. I would like to be able to read faster.
Number 7, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
I was a big, big fan of Bugs Bunny. I love Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Number 8, what is your favorite rainy day activity?
Okay. 2, writing. I love writing on a rainy day. It's just a really good feeling. But my favorite thing to do, and rain makes it even better, is to go to the movies on a weekday afternoon when other people are all at work and I'm just in the movie theater. Even if it's not very crowded, I love that feeling.
Yeah. Number 9, if you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
3 dinner guests. I would like to, and they have to come. I mean, I would like to meet Barack Obama. I think he's really interesting. I would like to hang out with Michael Conley. He's my favorite author, that's not a friend of mine author. And I think the third person I'd like at that table is, well, you two. So we got to figure out how to make you two one person so we can actually eat and talk about books together when I'm not nervous by being on camera, and we can just talk. That would be fun.
We'd be there.
Okay.
Number 10. What is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Be yourself. I don't remember who told me, but be yourself it's hard because there are times growing up and even times when you're an adult where you look at people and you go, wow, it seems like they're doing this better than I'm doing this. I should be like them. And it's totally not the case. You should be like you. And, I am dopey and I don't have the hair I used to have. And I not that exciting and not that athletic, but I have a fun, amazing life because I finally realized I'm just going to be the person that I am all the way.
You racked the Turbo 10. You rocked the Turbo 10, I mean. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much for spending this time with us. We can't wait to read your future books.
Well, I can't wait for you to read them either. And I did not, that's very nice to say I did not write. I totally messed up on the snack question and others, but I appreciate it so much. You guys are amazing. And I am such fans and I'm so appreciative that you would include me on your show.